Hey guys, it's Dangerous Damien, here to upload my first ever Hearthstone video. So today I thought I'd do a review for the new set, Fractured in Alterac Valley. I'm super excited for this set to come out, so I've been doing a lot of theory crafting about the new cards, thinking about them, thinking about which archetypes might be good in the new meta, and which ones will be trash. I'm going to give a star rating for each one, and analyze which decks I think it will go into or create. I took a lot of inspiration from Trump. I love his review videos, and I tried to just kind of create my own version. They will be very similar, and I will be using his exact same star rating system, which I will explain right now. So if you've already seen it, or you just don't care enough to know, skip to... So each card is rated out of 5 stars. 5 stars means it'll be in a tier 1 deck, 4 stars means it'll be in a tier 2 deck, and so forth, up to tier 4. If a card is really good in a deck, or creates it, or defines it, it'll be given an extra star. And if a card goes into multiple decks, say like multiple tier 3 decks, it will be given 4 stars. If it goes into multiple tier 2 decks, it will be given 3 stars. If a card sees no play at all, or only in like super non-competitive meme decks, it'll be given 1 star. If it sees a little bit of experimentation, or maybe sometimes makes the cut for like a really bad deck, it'll be given 2 stars. And if a card is only very rarely run in a good deck, it'll be given 1 star less than the tier of that deck. Does that make sense? I don't care. So in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Paladin, Rogue, and Priest. Now enough with the preamble, let's get into it. So first off is Paladin. So starting off with Big Paladin, I don't really believe in this archetype. I think at best it will be tier 4. So Cavalry Horn, Vitality Surge, Protect the Innocent, and Brasswing will all get 2 stars. I don't think this will really work out. There is not that great payoff and not that much synergy really to cheat out your big stuff. I think this archetype is very slow, and it doesn't even have that much great survivability against aggro. And I think there'll just be better big decks like Big Demon Hunter and Big Spell Mage. Protect the Innocent does kind of stand out because it could see play in other decks, like maybe a mid-range or control-y Paladin. If you run it with True Silver or the Hammer, Lightbringer's Hammer as a package, you could have an actual turn 5, 2 5/5s, which is good, but it's pretty inconsistent, and fairly slow too. I do think that package will be in Big Paladin though, with Vitality Surge and some other healing that naturally goes into a control deck. Brasswing doesn't even seem that good as a big cheat payoff. It's not very impactful immediately on the board unless you're playing against specifically a token deck. And on turn like 6 or 7 when you're cheating it out, they're probably not going to have a big 2 health board. And the honorable kill is going to go off very rarely, I think, so it might not even make it into that deck if that deck does exist. And now for the good Paladin package, Hand Buff Paladin. I think this deck will be tier 1 and will possibly shape the meta. I think there could be 2 versions of the deck, either an aggro version with Cariel as a top end, or a mid-range version, possibly with Librams. I think both could also exist, and the mid-range one will probably be better, but even the aggro one I think could be tier 1 or 2. Cariel is just so good. It's incredibly valuable as a roadblock to both aggro and combo, and it just has really good value too. The hero power, +4/+4 to a minion in your hand, is a powerhouse in the mid-range deck. Cariel is just a really good hero card, and I think it will slot perfectly into Hand Buff Paladin, which is already a deck with some really good support. That's not all Hand Buff Paladin is getting though. Seidan the Scarlet is an incredibly powerful 3-drop for Hand Buff Paladin, which is a slot that they did struggle with a little bit. He's really good in both the aggro and mid-range version. You hit him with 1 hit of the Cariel hero power, and he's a 10/10 rush for 3 mana. Granted, on turn 8, that's not the best, but he could be even bigger than that, and that's just pretty powerful. You could also play him early. He's very versatile. If you play him on 3, and he goes and stays alive for a turn, you could buff him up very quickly. He can really snowball. Like say you hit him with a Blessing of Authorita, that's an 18/18 rush on like turn 8, or even on turn 5, which is pretty good. But it does add a hard removal. But for 3 mana, you're not really investing that much in this card. So, he's just very valuable to any board-based deck. Stonehearth Vindicator is another really solid 3-drop for Paladin. Tutor plus Mana Cheat is just really good, and this could be basically a 0 mana 3/1 draw card. Best case scenario. There aren't that many great 3 mana spells in Paladin though, that this can really synergize with, so you might have to warp your deck a little to play this card. But I think it's worth it. Even just with Hand of a Doll, this is a 3-mana 5/2 that draws a card. That's pretty good. There's also a new card that synergizes with this really well, Hold the Bridge. If you play it with Hold the Bridge, that's a 3-mana 5/2 Divine Shield, which is about as good as Goody 2 shields, but it's better if you already have a minion on board. Then you can play Hold the Bridge for free and probably get full value on it, which would make this card really good. I think this slots really well into mid-range Paladin and aggro Paladin. If Paladin gets more 3-drop spells that actually have like a proactive board presence, then this will be scary. Speaking of Hold the Bridge, I'm not totally sold on it. You might have to play it just because of Stonehearth Vindicator, but by itself, it's not really that great. 3 mana for 2/1 of stats is pretty weak for a buff card. It compares pretty unfavorably to Gift of Luminance, honestly, and that card never saw play. But it could with Stonehearth Vindicator, but I doubt it. Except for the lifesteal. The lifesteal does help with like controlling mid-range decks, which could be valuable for the more mid-range version of hand buff Paladin, especially if the meta is super aggro heavy, but not totally sure. Hold the Bridge gets 4 stars, because I think it will probably make it into that deck just because of Stonehearth Vindicator, but it might not. And even if it does, it might be like a 1-of, or it might not be that good in the deck. It's just not a card you want to pay its full mana cost for. It's only really good if you cheat it out. And even then, meh. Templar Captain is a really powerful 8-drop for Paladin. I think it will be a 1-of, or maybe even 2-of in the mid-range hand buff Paladin. It synergizes very well with Varian, because it has Rush, and I do think that deck will play Varian. Just 8 mana for 13/13 of proactive stats. That's pretty good, and it could be even better. It's very similar to Troublemaker, which has seen quite a bit of play in Control Warrior. It's just that Control Warrior was never really that good, but a mid-range control-y hand buff Paladin could be really good, because Cariel is so good at stalling the game. This card will also obviously see play in Big Paladin, and I think if that deck does succeed at all, this will probably be the reason why. And finally, Dunbaldar Bridge. This card is very slow. It's 4 mana and has absolutely no immediate board presence, and all it does is buff the cards that you're making, which if they have Rush, it could be kind of fast, but ugh. It does synergize very well with Day at the Fair, which I think is the only way it could work. Like you play this on 4, turn 5, you play Corrupted Day at the Fair for 15/15 of stats for 3 mana. That's pretty good, but it dies to a 3 mana board clear, or 3 damage board clear, which could be pretty common, especially in a token heavy meta that I do see happening. Also, that's just really the only synergy this card has. Like, there's not a lot of other good token support in Paladin, and I don't think that can make a deck. It's slow, clunky, doesn't have a lot of support. 1 star. Next up is Rogue. Rogue got a couple of new packages this set, none of which could really stand on their own, but I think they could fit into some pre-existing Rogue decks. So starting off, the first package is Burgle Rogue. I'm going to split it up a couple times, because I think there's a pretty big difference in power for these cards, and even the archetypes they could possibly fit into. I think you can split up Burgle Rogue, taking just Double Agent and Wild Paw Knoll, and another card I'll be talking about in a little bit, and adding that to a different Rogue deck, like an Aggro Rogue or a Miracle type Rogue. Because those cards are really good just on their own. Double Agent could be a turn 3 6/6, which is quite valuable. Wild Paw Knoll is just really powerful. It could be like a 2 mana, 3 mana, possibly 4/5 Rush, which is a really good tempo swing. There's murmurings of running Maestra of the Masquerade in your Tempo Rogue deck, and then these 2 cards, and then you don't have to run any Burgle cards at all. You just play them by themselves just on turn 3, because the Rogue cards in your hand will count as cards from other classes, and whenever you draw a Rogue card, that counts as another card from another class being added to your hand. That's pretty good, having to run no Burgle support and then getting still your turn 3 6/6. But after that, you have 4 badly statted cards left in your deck, the Wild Paw Knoll, and the Maestra, and the other Double Agent, because you will go back into Rogue after you play the first of those cards. And that's pretty bad, like 3 mana 3/3, 5 mana 4/5 with Rush, ugh. Especially for Rogue, because you have so much draw and so much synergy that having those dead cards in your deck is really going to put you behind. You could also just play Double Agent and Maestra in a Negro Rogue deck. That would probably be the better option than playing those and Wild Paw Knoll, because Wild Paw Knoll is usually going to come out fairly late, because it only discounts by every time you draw a Rogue card. It doesn't count the ones you already have in your hand. So, I think that would be better. Even still, it's super inconsistent. and you're running 3 badly statted cards if you don't draw the double agent by turn 3. So I don't think you're going to be running Maestra in those aggro road decks, but there are just some good Burgle cards that would slot in pretty easily that could allow you to play these 2 cards. So I'll give them 4 stars. I believe they could fit into a tier 2 deck, or maybe fit into a couple tier 3 or 4 decks. As for Lobotomizer and Contraband Stash, I think these will see play in a more dedicated Burgle Rogue deck. It'll be a little bit slower because Contraband Stash is very slow and more kind of focused on value. And it doesn't seem like a great deck to me. I would say that it's tier 4, so I'll give them both 2 stars. This deck does seem very fun though, and it's a shame that it's going to be so low. Contraband Stash is very valuable. It's basically Tess, but without the stick. I think that's really good. You're getting 5 cards, which is about all that you need to have a huge tempo swing, maybe deal some damage to your opponent's board, while developing your own. That's pretty good, especially if you can do it over and over. So you have 2 copies of this in your deck. So that could outvalue some other value type decks. But you can only play it in a slower Burgle Rogue deck. Lobotomizer isn't great. It's just a 2-mana 2/2 weapon that could get you 1 or 2 cards from your opponent's deck, which might not even be from their class. Keep that in mind, that makes it a little bit worse, but I do think it's just barely good enough to see play in that deck, because there's not actually a lot of great ways to burgle cards from your opponent in Standard right now. Swashbuckler and Wand Thief are both really good for that, but beyond those 2, there's not a lot of viable burgle options, so that's really going to make this deck a lot worse. If it had more support, I think it could be at least like tier 3. It's still a little slow to actually be like tier 2 or tier 1, but either way, super fun deck. There's also Seraphine Fleet Runner. I don't think this is going to see play in any Burgle Rogue deck, at least one that's competitive. I think it will see quite a bit of play just because it's a fun card, gives a lot of variance, and I am excited to play with it. That might put it into 2 stars, but I don't think it really has any competitive value at all, which is a shame because a good Burgle Rogue Legendary could have actually helped this deck out a lot, but I think it's too inconsistent and also slow for the value rogue deck. It also has some anti-synergy with your Burgle Rogue synergy minions, which is the main synergy of your deck, so that's a shame. It is pretty good with Contraband Stash, because getting minions off Contraband Stash will be pretty good, because spells can be targeted, which will make it a lot worse if you target your own stuff, but that's really slow to play Seraphine, a bunch of cards, and then Contraband Stash. I don't think that's really going to work out. 1 star. The last card for Burgle Rogue, which also fits into Rogue's other archetype, is Reconnaissance. This is a really powerful Burgle Rogue card. I think without this, Burgle Rogue wouldn't really work as an archetype, both as a little small package and as a deck in itself. This just gives a lot of consistency, because you get to actually discover a decent card. Just compare this to a Studies card. Every single Studies card, except for Demonic Studies, saw like good amounts of play. And this, I would say, is even better because you're guaranteed to get a class card. That's pretty good. There's not a lot of bad class death rattles. And you get to discover one too, so it's not going to be random or anything. You're just getting 0 mana, a decent card that will synergize with your deck and give you Burgle synergy. I think that's really powerful. Reconnaissance, 5 stars. And I think it will also fit into other rogue archetypes, such as Death Rattle Rogue. Death Rattle Rogue gets Forsaken Lieutenant and Snowfall Graveyard. Forsaken Lieutenant is very good in the Death Rattle Rogue deck, but it's pretty specific. It's not that great with normal 3-mana Death Rattles like Devouring Ectoplasm or Ticketmaster or Akama. It just doesn't really give enough value to actually be good with those, I think. I could be wrong though, it could just see play with a bunch of average Death Rattles, but there are also some good Death Rattles available to Rogue, like Nerubian Egg, this would be very good with. Infiltrator Liliana is also really good with this card. Imagine turn 2 Forsaken Lieutenant, turn 3 Snowfall Graveyard, turn 4 Infiltrator Liliana. That's a really good curve. You can get 2 attacking 4/2s on turn 4. And then you still have the Snowfall Graveyard active, you still have the Liliana herself, which will probably trigger her Death Rattle twice, and that's a lot of face damage. That could be a good package. There's also another really great 4-mana legendary Death Rattle card in the new set. I'm not going to name names just yet, but he's very good, and he will probably make this deck. I think he gives a lot of support that this deck needs, especially because they can tutor him with sketchy information. I'll talk more about that later when I actually talk about that card. But yeah, I think you could throw that Death Rattle package into an aggressive rogue deck, or probably there's enough to make at least half a deck of just Death Rattle cards and Death Rattle support. Also, possibly, you could combine it with the Burgle package and make a deck that has both. I think that'd be very interesting, and I think it's because of Reconnaissance that that deck could work, because that card synergizes so well with both of the strategies. So yeah, pretty exciting. Coldtooth Yeti is a pretty random card. I guess they just really had to throw the Yeti reference into this set, but I appreciate it. And I think it's actually possibly underrated right now by the majority. This card is really good with Foxy Fraud. Turn 3, 3/2, plus a 4/5. You can't really beat that, except for probably Face Hunter can. But that's also not that hard to pull off, and even without specifically Foxy Fraud. 3 mana 4/5 isn't that bad, especially with combo synergy in a Tempo Rogue deck. I think it has potential. I'll say 2 stars. Finally, we have Spymaster Scabs. This guy is one of the most powerful hero cards. He will probably go into every single rogue deck, except for if it's very aggro. It will definitely go into the Burgle value rogue deck. I think it'll go into Death Rattle rogue. It's a little slow at 7 mana, but once it's played, it completely gets rid of all the board presence, and even gives you some tempo with the hero power. And it also gives 2/4/2 shadows with stealth. That's pretty good. Note, 2 damage AoE will be very good against rogue this set, with possibly the Lillians in your Death Rattle rogue and Stealth rogue, and killing the shadows. They're not as invulnerable as you may think, because there is already a lot of 2 damage AoE in this set, and the 4/2 shadows can just die for next turn before they can even attack. But yeah, Scabs is just a really solid card. I think if Poison Rogue does exist at all next set, this card will be really good in that deck. It just gives a lot of stall, and even some tempo. It's just exactly what that deck wants. And with the more slower decks that I can see popping up next meta, I think Poison Rogue might not actually be that bad. So look out for this card. I think you'll be seeing quite a bit of it. 5 stars. Not necessarily because it'll be in a tier 1 deck, but I think it'll go into pretty much every rogue deck, and it'll be pretty good in those. Especially if Poison Rogue is like around tier 2, which I could definitely see, it'll pretty much be the best card in that deck. Next up is the Priest set. The Priest set could be the most interesting of any of them in Alterac Valley, or it could be the most garbage. I'm gonna predict it will be both. Priest got a lot of weird situational cards, and cards trying to push archetypes such as Heal, Zoo, Priest, which has only kind of worked like once maybe in the last 2 years, and has only really worked never. So starting off with Light of the Naru, Shadow Word Devour, Luminous Geode, Stormpike Aid Station, and Bless. These are some very interesting cards to me, because I don't know that much about Priest, and I'm pretty bad at building Priest decks, but there seems to be a lot of combinations of these cards that can make something pretty broken, or maybe just consistently aggressive enough to beat certain control decks. It's hard for me to tell, but I'm sure that a better deck builder than me will make something pretty good out of these cards. For example, Bless can be very good if you play turn 1 Frazzled Freshman into turn 2 Bless. That's an attacking 6/6 on turn 2. Granted, Face Hunter can pretty much already do that, but that might not be all that this Priest deck has to offer. Bless is very similar to Inner Fire, which Blizzard rotated out because of their Interfere for combo decks. Divine Spirit is gone though, as well as some other good health buffing cards, so I think this card may be more Interfere. But if you combine it with, say, Shadow Word Devour and Terror Guard Escapee, that card is still in Standard. You play, just ballparking here, turn 1 Frazzled Freshman, turn 2 Kulturin Champlain to give him +2 health, or Luminous Geode maybe will fit into that deck. Say they both survive, which there's a pretty good chance they will. Turn 3 Stormpike Aid Station, give them both 2 health. Pretty decent, they'll probably survive another turn. Turn 4, Terror Guard Escapee, and then Shadow Word Devour on the Terror Guard. So it's at least a 3/10, then they all get +2 health again. And then turn 5, I don't know. But you could keep snowballing from there even. Like you could play Psych Split on the Terror Guard Escapee, and then whittle them down, and then eventually finish them with just a 13/13 with Bless. That could be very good. They have actually been pushing Zoo Priest for the whole year too. There's a lot of decent Zoo Priest cards in the core set, Ashes of Outland, pretty much every single set since Ashes of Outland. I think it could all come together and make a really powerful deck. Turn 1 Imprisoned Homunculus into turn 3 Stormbug Aid Station is also pretty good. That's a turn 3 2/7 taunt that will continue to get bigger. There's just a lot of interesting combinations of these cards that you can do. Like, for example, Lightsteed. Never saw any play at all. Garbage card, right? But you combine it with Light of the Naru on, say, like turn 5. That could be your turn 5 play that I was missing before. That's plus 3 health and 3 healing to all of your minions. Against board-based decks, that destroys. Still not super unfair, but I just like the different combinations. Granted, that's also super vulnerable to silence, like the 1-mana mass silence that Priest has now. But that's still pretty good. It is also a real shame that Bless is not a Shadow card, because I think it could be pretty good in Shadow Priest. Speaking of Shadow Priest, it might just be better than all this new Tempo Zoo Priest healing stuff. So, unfortunately, Daddy Benedictus might just poo-poo on this whole archetype. Overall, I'm just very unsure about this entire preset. I do feel, though, like Shadow Word Devourer, Stormpike Aid Station, and Bless could come together. They're the most likely cards to make a really good, or at least decent, Zoo Priest deck. So I'm going to give them 3 stars. If they don't, though, I don't think Priest really has any hope. Light of the Naru and Luminous Geode could also maybe go into that deck, or maybe make their own deck. Light of the Naru is also pretty good in control, but it's worse than Renew. I mean, you have to be at 3 or less health to really get value off of it, because you're not going to be healing your minions. That's just pretty hard to do. And it doesn't really work in the tempo deck either. You're probably not going to actually have your minions be that damaged, or have enough face damage. And you don't really want to be healing your opponent just to draw a card. It's bad. So I'm going to give those two both 2 stars. Next up is Deliverance. I thought this card might have a chance with possibly the combination of turn 2 Nerubian Egg into turn 3 Deliverance. You get a 3/3 Nerubian Egg and a 4/4. Maybe you can also put in Blessed with Nerubian Egg for a bit more consistency. But then I realized you have to honorably kill the minion, which is bad. Like, you're not going to get this on enemy minions that consistently. And even if you do, it's 3 mana 3/3 deal 3, which is like good, but it's super inconsistent, and what deck actually wants that? Like, it's not going to be good in Tempo Priest or anything. So 1 star. There's also some Death Rattle Control Priest stuff. There is Xyrella the Devout, Undying Guardian, and Spirit Guide. This doesn't seem good to me. Like, Xyrella is pretty good value, especially just with her hero power, but you're not playing that many Death Rattles in Control Priest right now, except for Light Shower Elemental. And yeah, you could play it with like the Undying Amulet card, make like a big Death Rattle Priest, but that really doesn't have any chance of being good in my opinion. You're not going to pull off any crazy combos with Xyrella unless you're playing some weird meme deck, which is cool, but I don't think it's going to be that competitive. However, Spirit Guide could be good. It's just a really solid card, 5 mana 5/5 taunt that draws 2 cards on its death. Unfortunately, it will not draw 2 cards for Shadow Priest, which is probably fine, because I don't think I wanted to play a 5 mana 5/5 card that's that slow anyway. But that could work in the weird Tempo Priest deck I was talking about before, and it will definitely be in the Xyrella control deck. But I don't think it has the Death Rattles or the finishing power, really, to be a good deck right now. So I will give Xyrella and Undying Disciple 2 stars, and I will give Spirit Guide 3 stars. And finally, we have this weird troll guy, Najak Hexen. This is an interesting card, but it's pretty slow and clunky. They're always going to get the minion back eventually, and if you're playing Control Priest, you'd rather just kill it and have it be done with forever, rather than having to kill it later after you maybe get 1 attack out of it, because your Najak is eventually going to die. You're not going to be bouncing it back to your hand or anything. You could maybe play it in Tempo Priest and then buff up its health, but you're already controlling their board pretty well, hopefully, in Tempo Priest, so you don't really want to be stealing their minions. And if they don't have any minions, this is a 4 mana 1/4, which is really bad. So I'm going to give it a 1 star. Good synergy with Xyrella, though. Thanks everybody for watching this review. I had a lot of fun making it, so I will definitely be making more in the future. Next up will probably be Warrior, Warlock, and Shaman. If you have any feedback, please let me know. I'm new to YouTube, but I'm trying to make the best quality videos that I can, so if you have any improvements or anything that you hated about this video, please tell me in the comments below. Trump, thank you. You are a huge inspiration for my content, not the president guy, the YouTuber. If you do see these videos, I hope you see them as a compliment to your videos and not theft of intellectual property. So see you guys next time. Stay tuned.